Pick it up, boy. That $20 is more than your kind ever earns using their minds. A child stood in a room full of money, staring at a board worth $50,000, and a man with $4 billion just threw cash at his feet in front of 200 witnesses. What that boy did next wasn't just unexpected. It was the kind of thing that takes 36 years of arrogance and 9 chess moves to destroy. Have you ever been laughed at by someone who had absolutely no idea who they were dealing with? To understand what happened that night, you have to go back past the party, past the bet, into the world that built a boy named Marcus Webb. Greenwich, Connecticut. The Hargrove estate sat behind iron gates at the end of a private road. 12 bedrooms. A ballroom. A garage full of cars that never left the property. Richard Hargrove, 56, had built a $4 billion hedge fund by reading people, identifying their weakness, and pressing until something gave. Wall Street called him a predator. He considered that a form of flattery. But money was never truly the point. Power was. Hargrove collected things other men wanted: paintings, vintage timepieces, people. He preferred an audience whenever he won. He required one. Guests at his gatherings learned to laugh at his remarks a half-second early, the way employees laugh at a boss who controls their livelihood. And moving quietly through all that marble and wealth was a woman named Carol Webb. Carol had maintained the Hargrove household for 6 years. She rode the 5:40 train from Bridgeport each morning, cleaned 12 bedrooms no one slept in, polished silverware no one used, and made the return journey home in the dark. Her hands were cracked from bleach and cleaning solution. Her back ached in ways she never discussed. She was 41 years old and had been invisible to wealthy people for most of those years. Hargrove never addressed her by name. He referred to her as the staff. When items went missing, she was questioned first. When nothing was missing, no one apologized. She endured it not because she had no dignity, but because dignity doesn't pay the rent in Bridgeport. And her son needed textbooks, bus fare, and a future. Once, a guest knocked a wine glass off the terrace railing. Hargrove charged Carol for it, deducted it from her paycheck without a single word. She found out at the bank. She returned the following morning at 5:40 regardless, because that was the position. And the position was the plan. And the plan was Marcus. That son was Marcus, 14 years old. Tall for his age, lean as a fence rail, with eyes that absorbed everything, and a voice that offered almost nothing. After school each day, he took 2 buses to the estate and waited in the kitchen until his mother was finished. House rules: stay in the corner, stay quiet, touch nothing. So Marcus sat on a stool near the pantry with a library book and made himself invisible. Straight A's at Bridgeport East. A teacher once told Carol her son possessed a remarkable mind. Carol had the note framed. It hung in their apartment beside a photograph of an old man seated at a chess table in a park. Remember that photograph. It matters later. Now, about the chessboard. It occupied a place of honor in Hargrove's study beneath a brass gallery lamp. Walnut and maple, hand-carved pieces imported from Vienna, $50,000. Beside it hung a framed newspaper clipping, yellowed at the edges. Yale Junior takes intercollegiate chess crown. Hargrove at 20 years old, grinning over a trophy. 36 years later, he was still that grin. Chess was his instrument of choice. At dinner events, he would offer a game to any guest bold enough to accept, then dismantle them while commenting on their errors out loud. You see what he did there? That's how people lose money with me, too. Then the line he savored most, delivered with a raised glass. No one in this room has ever beaten me. No one ever will. The guests would chuckle and examine their shoes. Nobody challenged him. Defeating Edward Hargrove was bad for business, and losing to him was simply the cost of being invited back. Everyone in Greenwich understood the arrangement. You let Richard win. But one Thursday evening in May, something small occurred in that study. Something no one was meant to witness. Carol was vacuuming the upstairs corridor. Marcus carried a tray of glasses past the study doorway, a task a caterer had handed him without asking, and stopped. The display board was arranged mid-game, frozen in a famous position from a championship match. Except it was wrong. One white knight stood a single square from where history had placed it, and that one square destroyed the entire logic of the position. Marcus knew the position the way other teenagers know song lyrics. He set down the tray. He checked over his shoulder. Then he reached out and slid the knight one square to the left. A soft click of wood on wood, and the board made sense again. "Interesting," said a voice behind him. A silver-haired man stood in the doorway holding a glass of club soda, composed eyes. A gray suit that made no announcements. Marcus froze, heart hammering, already composing an apology. But the man only glanced at the corrected knight, then at the boy, the way a jeweler examines a stone. Everyone else has walked past. "Most people get that knight wrong," the man said quietly. "You didn't." Marcus grabbed his tray and was gone before another word could follow. He didn't catch the stranger's name that night. He would hear it again soon, spoken with deference, in a room full of people who had none for him. In the kitchen later, Carol read her son's expression the way only mothers can. "You touched something," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus began explaining the board, the square, the broken position, and she stopped him, with a look she'd spent 6 years perfecting. "Baby, listen to me carefully. In this house, we don't correct wealthy men. We don't get noticed. Head down, hands to yourself, and we go home safe. You understand me?" "Yes, ma'am." He meant it too. Marcus Webb had no intention of being noticed by anyone in that house. He wanted to read his book, wait for his mother, and disappear. But 3 weeks later, the invitations went out. Heavy cream cardstock, gold lettering. Hargrove Capital had crossed $4 billion under management, and Richard Hargrove was hosting a celebration to ensure the entire eastern seaboard was aware. 200 guests. Senators, fund managers, a celebrity chef flown in from Manhattan. All week, the house filled with strangers. The florists stacked white roses to the ceiling. Workers stretched lights across the lawn like grounded stars. And throughout it all, Hargrove moved through the corridors, rehearsing his toast, pausing at the study each evening to admire the board, the clipping, the younger version of himself. A king reviewing his crown. Carol was ordered to work a double shift, which meant Marcus, with nowhere else to be, would spend the evening in the kitchen. Sitting on his stool, keeping his head down, it almost held. For 3 hours that night, nobody registered the boy in the kitchen at all. The ballroom shimmered like a jewelry case. 200 of the wealthiest people on the East Coast drank champagne beneath 3 chandeliers, and Richard Hargrove moved among them, collecting congratulations like debts. Around 10 o'clock, the catering staff ran short of hands. A manager pointed at Marcus. "Carry this. Go." So the boy in second-hand sneakers walked tray after tray through a room of tuxedos, eyes down, exactly as his mother had trained him. It held until the study. The doors stood open for the event, the $50,000 board glowing beneath its lamp. Marcus only intended to pass, but the position from 3 weeks ago was back on display, and his feet stopped before his judgment could intervene. 5 seconds was all it required. "Well, look at this." Hargrove's voice cut through the room like a knife on crystal. He stood in the doorway with a dozen guests behind him, scotch in hand, smile already aimed. "Staff's kid examining my board. You know what that costs? More than your mother earns in a year." Laughter, the kind that carries. More guests drifted over, drawn by the scent of a scene. Behind them, Carol appeared and went pale. Hargrove reached into his pocket, peeled a 20 from a money clip, and tossed it at the boy's feet. The bill spun, floated, and landed on the marble. "Pick it up. That's more than your kind earns using their minds." Marcus didn't move. He looked at the bill, then at the man, and said nothing at all. The silence stretched just long enough to embarrass someone. A voice from the crowd broke it. "Careful, Richard. Maybe the boy actually plays," and there it was. The opening Hargrove never declined. An audience, a target, a stage. He set down his scotch and spread his arms like a ringmaster. "You know what? Tonight I'm feeling generous. 1 game. The boy beats me, undefeated in this house for 20 years, and I write him a check for $1 million. He let the silence collect the gasp and received it. He loses. He and his mother take their belongings and never step inside this house again. Mr. Hargrove, sir, please. Carol pushed through the crowd, her voice unsteady. He's 14. We're not looking for trouble. I'm begging you. Then your boy should keep his eyes off my property. Marcus looked at his mother, at her cracked hands twisting the hem of her apron, at 6 years of swallowed humiliation standing in one trembling woman. Then he looked down at the $20 bill lying on the marble like a dare. Somewhere in his pocket, his fingers found a small wooden king, its crown worn smooth by 2 generations of hands. All right, Marcus said, 1 game. The room erupted, laughter, applause, someone calling for the board. Carol closed her eyes. Fairgrove grinned. You hear that, everyone? The housekeeper's boy accepts. This won't take long. He was right about that. He simply had the winner wrong. Because what no one in that ballroom knew, not even the man gripping the money clip, was where that quiet boy had spent every Saturday of his childhood, and who had been waiting there to teach him. While the staff cleared a table in the center of the ballroom and 200 guests pressed forward for the spectacle, Marcus Webb stood very still. And in his mind, he was 9 years old again, in a park in Harlem, watching an elderly man set up a chessboard with hands that looked like tree roots. Theodore Mason, Carol's father. Everyone at the stone tables in Marcus Garvey Park simply called him Pop. For 40 years, Pop had been a legend that nobody famous had ever heard of. A hotel doorman by profession, a chess player by calling, he spent his Saturdays at those stone tables, taking on all challengers for $5 a game. College students, club players, once a touring master who stopped smiling 12 moves in. Pop defeated them all, then shook their hands and returned half their money. He never entered a rated tournament. Entry fees cost money, and money went to rent to Carol, and later to a grandson with watchful eyes. The chess world never learned his name. The park knew. The park was sufficient. Marcus was 5 when Pop first sat him at a board. While other children learned cartoons, Marcus learned that a knight moves like an L and thinks like a blade. Every Saturday for 6 years, rain or shine. Pop taught openings the way other grandfathers taught fishing, patiently, with stories. He taught endgames on a board with a missing pawn they replaced, with a bottle cap. And he delivered one lesson above all others. The board doesn't ask your color, son. Doesn't ask your zip code or your father's bank account. These 64 squares. Same pieces on both sides. It's the only fair place I've ever found in this country. So when you sit down equal. By 11, Marcus was defeating everyone at the stone tables, except the old man himself. Pop studied his grandson across the board one October afternoon, and saw something that made his eyes go bright. You're better than I am, boy, he said. Don't tell anyone yet. That winter, Pop's heart began to fail. The last Saturday, he was too weak to reach the park. They set the old board on his hospital blanket. They could barely lift the pieces. He played regardless. Halfway through, he stopped, picked up his white king, the one with the crown worn smooth from 40 years of his thumb, and folded it into his grandson's palm. Listen carefully now, he whispered. One day somebody's going to look at you and see nothing but a poor black kid. He'll laugh before you ever touch a piece. Don't argue, don't shout. You let the board speak. The board never lies. He passed on a Tuesday. Marcus was 11 years old. He didn't weep at the funeral. He went to the park instead, sat at the empty stone table, and played both sides of his grandfather's favorite game until the streetlights came on. After that, the game went underground. A donated laptop, free chess websites, a username that gave nothing away. Stone Table 11. 3 years. More than 10,000 games, often past midnight with the screen brightness turned low so his mother wouldn't notice the light beneath his door. He studied grandmaster games the way preachers study scripture, replaying them move by move until the patterns lived in his hands. He 14, Stone Table 11, carried a rating of 2,412, master territory. Strong club players avoided matching with him, and he had developed a specialty, almost a signature. He hunted aggressive players, the ones who attacked early, grabbed pawns, chased their queen across the board like a bully chasing lunch money. Marcus had assembled a private collection of traps built precisely for that kind of player. He could detect arrogance through a screen. His mother never knew. Not truly. She saw the laptop and assumed homework. Chess was the one secret Marcus kept from her. Not out of shame, but because the game was the last room in the world where his grandfather was still alive. He wasn't prepared to share that room with anyone. Now, in a Greenwich ballroom, a crowd of strangers laughed at the housekeeper's son, and a man worth $4 billion cracked his knuckles over a $50,000 board. Marcus pulled out the chair and sat down. Beneath the table, his thumb traced the worn crown of a wooden king. Somebody's going to look at you and see nothing but a poor black kid. Okay, Pop, he thought. Let the board speak. He arranged the table in the center of the ballroom beneath the largest chandelier. Hargrove insisted on it. If he was going to teach the Stiffs boy a lesson, the entire eastern seaboard would be watching. 2 staff members carried the $50,000 board from the study like pallbearers. Phones appeared everywhere. Dozens of them raised over shoulders. Red recording lights blinking like small eyes. A hedge fund manager's associate opened a live stream. 40 viewers, then 200, then more. Remember those phones. They matter later. As Hargrove rolled up his sleeves, the silver-haired man in the quiet gray suit stepped from the crowd. Pitchard, if there's money riding on this, you'll want a neutral official. Walter. Hargrove brightened. Everyone, Walter Haynes. Master Walter Haynes. The genuine article, ranked among the finest in the country in his time. Perfect. Now no one can claim I didn't defeat the boy fairly. Marcus looked up and recognized the composed eyes immediately. The man from the study. The one who had watched him correct the knight. Haynes gave no indication they had ever met. He simply took his position beside the table and asked, in a voice that carried through the room, "State the terms, Richard." Clearly, for everyone present. Hargrove obliged, savoring every syllable. 1 million to the boy if he wins. If he loses, he and his mother leave my employment and my property tonight. Witnessed, Haynes said. 200 phones witnessed it as well. Hargrove dropped into his chair and spun the board. I play white. He always play white. He fixed the boy with a look. First lesson at no charge. White moves first. I attack. You endure. Marcus said nothing. He centered his pieces one by one, the way Pop had taught him. Touch each soldier before the battle. He'd know where everyone stands. Move 1. Hargrove drove his king's pawn forward. 2 squares hard enough to rattle the rank behind it. Classic announcement of a man declaring himself. Several guests actually applauded, as though pushing a pawn merited a standing ovation. Marcus answered before the applause ended. Pawn to meet pawn, center against center. The oldest reply in the game. 3 seconds, perhaps less. Fast hands, Hargrove said. Fast hands lose fast games. Move 2. And here came the queen. Hargrove launched his most powerful piece into the open early, sliding her toward the boy's king side, targeting the weakest square on the board, the one beside the black king that only the king himself defends. It was a barroom move, a 4-move checkmate attempt, the kind of assault that destroys beginners and announces amateurs to everyone else. Someone in the crowd who understood the game whispered to his companion. He's going for the scholar's mate. Trying to finish a child in 4 moves. Marcus glanced at the queen, then he did something small and unusual. He smiled, not at Hargrove, at the board. The way you smile at an old friend, delivering a joke you've heard 100 times. His knight came out, composed as a doorman, defending the threat and developing a piece in the same motion. Seconds. At the edge of the table, Grandmaster Walter Haynes stopped watching the game and started watching the boy. Because Haynes had seen that precise reply 10,000 times, but almost never from amateurs. Amateurs panic when a queen charges. They throw pawns in front of her like sandbags. This boy hadn't flinched. His knight didn't merely defend. It claimed the center and posed the queen a quiet question. And now what? Move 3. Hargrove developed his bishop, aiming it down the long diagonal toward the boy's king like a rifleman locating a window. 3 moves, he announced to the room. From closing this out. He checked his watch theatrically. Someone want to arrange the boy's transportation? He'll be leaving shortly. Laughter rolled through the room. In the back, Carol gripped a door frame with both hands, lips moving in silent prayer. The server touched her shoulder gently and remained beside her. Then Marcus made his third move, and the room received its first surprise of the evening. He advanced a pawn on the side of the board. A quiet little push that appeared to accomplish nothing, except it left one of his other pawns sitting undefended, directly in the path of Hargrove's queen. A free piece, a gift wrapped and presented. The whisper in the crowd groaned. The kid just gave away a pawn. He's already cracking. Hargrove saw it too. His grin returned, wide and hungry. You see that, everyone? This is what happens when you let them sit at tables they don't belong at. His hand drifted over the queen. I almost feel sorry taking it. Haynes's eyes narrowed, a flicker, gone in half a... He had seen the pawn, and unlike everyone else in the ballroom, he had also seen what was positioned behind it. Beneath the table, Marcus's thumb brushed the worn wooden crown one final time. The trap his grandfather had taught him on a rainy Saturday. One built for bullies who chase lunch money. It was now open for business. All it required was an arrogant man's hand on a queen. Hargrove picked her up. Move 4. Queen took the bait. Hargrove snatched the undefended pawn and displayed it between two fingers like a trophy, turning it toward the crowd. One down, he said. The rest arriving soon. Light applause. Someone whistled. What he failed to notice, what nearly everyone failed to notice, was where his queen now stood, deep inside enemy territory, far from home, surrounded by squares that belonged to a 14-year-old. Here's what Pop used to explain at the stone tables about traps. You don't catch a wolf by pursuing it. You catch it by making it hungry. You leave something on the ground, one piece at a time. Each piece placed a little deeper into the canyon. The wolf believes it's winning. The wolf believes it's the most intelligent creature in the valley, right up until the moment it turns and sees how far it has walked in. And the walls. Marcus answered move 4 without hesitation. His second knight stepped out, composed as the first, and aimed itself, though no one but Haynes could yet see it, at a square 3 moves away in the future. In his mind, his grandfather's voice kept steady time. Develop with a threat. Make every soldier earn his square. Let the man eat. Move 5. Hargrove, feeling invincible and generous, captured a second pawn. This one sat in front of the boy's queenside, and taking it, pulled the white queen even further from her king, like a general wandering away from his forces to loot a farmhouse. A crowd responded. 2 pawns ahead, the billionaire was winning. Glasses clinked somewhere in the back. Anyone measuring by material alone would say, Hargrove held the advantage. That chess isn't measured by material, it's measured by one thing only, and Marcus's reply to move 5 made that clear. His dark squared bishop slid out along the diagonal and settled onto a square, where it stared unblinking directly toward the White King's front position. Count the pieces now aimed at Hargrove's home rank. 1 knight, a second knight, a bishop. A queen still waiting patiently on her starting square, like a storm that had not yet decided when to arrive. Hargrove reached for his glass and found it empty. He signaled a server without looking, and the room observed a billionaire waiting for his own staff, for what appeared to be the first time in living memory. Move 6. For the first time all evening, Richard Hargrove had to think. He stared at the board, and, somewhere behind his eyes, an old instinct from his college days woke and began screaming. His queen was 2 pawns richer and completely isolated. His knights remained unmoved. His king stood in the open, with his defenses unformed. And the boy's pieces, when precisely had they all advanced, stood arranged in a pattern Hargrove almost recognized. Something from a text he had skimmed 30 years ago. Something with a warning attached. The room noticed the silence. 30 seconds. A minute. The expression on Hargrove's face remained in place, but it had stopped reaching his eyes. He drew a silk handkerchief from his breast pocket and pressed it once against his temple. Taking your time, Richard, someone called out, friendly. The laughter that followed was thinner than the previous rounds. He moved at last, retreating his queen 1 square, a small withdrawal dressed as repositioning. The first backward step of the evening. Marcus answered in 3 seconds. He castled his king to safety. his rook sliding into place like a door bolting shut. Everything tidy, everything connected. At the rope line of spectators, a portfolio manager leaned toward Haynes and whispered, "Walter, be honest with me. The kid is just lucky, right?" Haynes didn't take his eyes from the board. Luck moves fast and thinks shallow. That boy is doing the opposite. He paused. I've encountered this structure before, in master-level tournaments. The queen drawn out of position. The patient development. The restraint. He isn't defending here, gentlemen. He's pursuing. Pursuing what? The most valuable piece on the board. That exchange traveled through the crowd the way whispers do, faster than champagne trays. People who had been smirking began narrating quietly into their phones. The live stream viewer count rolled past 4,000. In Bridgeport, in Harlem, in dormitory rooms and barbershops. Strangers were beginning to watch a 14-year-old in second-hand sneakers stare down a billionaire. By the doorway, Carol had stopped praying. She was watching her son's face, that composed, unhurried face, and seeing someone else in it. Her father's stillness, her father's eyes. Her hand rose slowly to her mouth. All these years, she thought, all those Saturdays. The laptop light beneath his door. She was no longer watching a boy in danger. She was watching her father's final lesson. Played aloud across a table in a billionaire's ballroom. Hargrove rolled his shoulders and forced the grin back into position. "Impressive," he said. "You've got some moves. Junior chess club material." He leaned forward, dropping his voice for the furs. "Enjoy it while it holds, boy. Men like me don't lose to people like you. The world is simply not arranged that way." Marcus looked up from the board. For the first time since sitting down, he met the billionaire's eyes and held them. Grandfather used to say, "The board doesn't ask your color, sir." He nodded at the position between them. "It's your move." Somewhere in the crowd, a phone camera zoomed in on Hargrove's face. The clip of what it recorded there, the hesitation, the doubt, the first fracture in 30 years of certainty, would be replayed 11 million times before the week was out. At the moment the internet would never stop discussing, the one that transformed a party spectacle into something else entirely, was still 3 moves away. He'd moved 7, the move that shifted the entire room. Marcus reached for his knight, the first one, the doorman, and placed it on a square deep in white territory, directly where Hargrove's pawn could take it. Then he folded his hands and waited. The crowd drew breath. Even those who didn't play understood a free piece when they saw one. "He's breaking under pressure," someone said. "He's falling apart." Hargrove laughed out loud, relief flooding his face like returning color. First the pawns, now a horse. "Thank you, boy." He captured the knight and placed it beside the board with the other material. "Walter, you were saying something about pursuing." Walter Haynes stood up. "A grandmaster does not rise at a casual social game." The people who understood that went quiet first, and the silence radiated outward from them, like ice spreading across still water. Haynes studied the position for a long moment. Then he spoke loudly enough for every phone to capture it. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the record, that was not a mistake. That was an invitation. And what you are witnessing now is a forced checkmate. Calculated, I believe, from the very first move this young man made." For 3 full seconds, no one in the ballroom breathed. Then the room changed sides. It happened the way crowds always change allegiances. Not gradually, but all at once, like a sail catching wind from the opposite direction. The guests who had laughed at the $20 bill pressed closer to the table, phones leading. The live stream count spun past 40,000. Someone in the comments typed the question that would trend by morning. "Who is this kid?" The change had a sound too. The laughter was gone, replaced by the low electric hum of 200 people selecting a new favorite. A server set down his tray to watch. The celebrity chef emerged from the kitchen with his apron still on. Even the string quartet stopped pretending to tune. Near the windows stood a heavyset man named Charles Whitmore, founder of Whitmore Pension Partners, the largest single investor in Hargrove Capital. $800 million of teachers and firefighters' retirement savings entrusted to Richard Hargrove's judgment. Whitmore wasn't watching the board. He was watching Hargrove's hands. They had begun to tremble. And Hargrove knew it. That was the cruelest element. He could feel the room abandoning him. The same room that had laughed on cue for 20 years, and the instinct that had built $4 billion told him precisely what to do. He raised to 2 million, he announced, too loudly. Let's make it worth watching. 2 million against anything. Afraid, boy. The desperation in it embarrassed everyone present. The senator found something interesting to examine on his shoes. 2 women exchanged a glance over their champagne. Marcus didn't even look up from the board. The original terms stand, sir. 1 million. A pause. It's still your move. Somewhere behind the crowd, Carol Webb stood taller than she had in 6 years. And at the table, Richard Hargrove looked down at a position that was quietly closing around his king like a fist. 2 moves from checkmate. The whole world was about to watch. 11 minutes. That is how long Richard Hargrove stared at the board before touching a piece on move 8. The ballroom waited. 200 guests, 46,000 strangers on a live stream, and 1 mother by the door, all watching a billionaire search for an exit that Walter Haynes had already announced did not exist. He tried regardless. He shoved a knight back toward his king, a bodyguard arriving at a fire that had already consumed everything, and released the piece as though it burned him. And now, at last, the Black Queen moved. All evening she had waited on her starting square, the storm that had not yet chosen when to arrive. Marcus lifted her gently. Pop never permitted slamming. He swept her across the entire board in one long diagonal into the heart of the white position. She settled onto her square with a click of wood on wood that everyone heard, because no one was producing any other sound at all. Check, Marcus said quietly. Observe the White King now, cornered in his own kingdom. His escape routes occupied not by enemy pieces but by his own soldiers. His rook stood in one corner like furniture too heavy to relocate. His pawns, never advanced, walled him in the front. The knight that arrived too late blocked the final door. Every guard Richard Hargrove commanded had become a wall of his own prison. There was exactly one legal move. Hargrove made it, sliding his king into the last open square, the way a man backs into the final corner of a burning room. His hand trembled so severely, the piece rocked after he released it. Move 9. The ballroom seemed to lean forward. The chandelier light caught the edge of the board. In the silence, you could hear ice dissolving in abandoned glasses. The hum of phone cameras focusing. The rapid, shallow breathing of a man who had wagered $1 million on his own superiority. Kirkus took 1 second, perhaps 2. Then his remaining knight rose, cleared the fence of pawns, the L that thinks like a blade, and landed on the one square from which no answer has ever existed in the entire recorded history of the game. Checkmate, Marcus said, not loudly, not triumphantly. He said it the way his grandfather used to say it at the stone tables. He quietly, almost gently, the way you deliver news someone should have seen arriving. 9 moves, the smothered mate, the oldest humiliation in chess. A king buried alive beneath his own army. Haynes would walk reporters through it later, move by move. The offered pawns that drew the queen out of position. The knight sacrifice that forced the door open. The patient developing moves that aimed every black piece at a single square. The 9 moves structured like 9 sentences of one complete argument. Then Marcus reached into his pocket. He removed a small wooden king, its crown worn smooth by 40 years of an old man's thumb and 3 years of a boy's, and stood it gently beside the board, facing the fallen position. This is for the man who taught me, he said. He played at stone tables in a park his entire life for $5 a game. He was stronger than anyone in this room. Nobody ever learned his name. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then a single pair of hands began to applaud. Slow, deliberate, each clap echoing off the marble. Grandmaster Walter Haynes. A moment later, the dam gave way, and the ballroom erupted. Servers, senators, billionaires' partners, and 46,000 strangers flooding a live stream with one word, typed over and over. King. 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 Carol crossed the floor she had cleaned for 6 years, and no one moved to stop her. She took her son's face in both hands and pressed her forehead to his. Cameras caught that too, and Richard Hargrove sat exactly where he was, alone at the center of all that applause, staring down at his $50,000 board at a king smothered by his own soldiers, on a battlefield where, for the first time in his life, his money had counted for absolutely nothing. The applause was still rolling when Hargrove found his voice. All right, all right. He rose, straightening his jacket, reaching for the old grin the way a man pats empty pockets for keys. Fun's over, everyone. Exceptional party trick. The boy was clearly coached, but well done, very well done. The applause ceased. The room watched him. The bet? He waved a hand. Come now, let's be serious. Nobody actually hands $1 million to the housekeeper's son over a board game. It was a hypothetical. Everyone understood that. It was theater. Nobody laughed. That's the nature of rooms like that. They can detect weakness, because most of those present had grown wealthy by exploiting it. Walter Haynes spoke first, in the measured tone of someone reading a formal verdict. You stated the terms yourself, Richard. Clearly, at my request, for everyone present. $1 million, witnessed by 200 guests, and documented on several dozen phones, including a live stream. He glanced toward the crowd. How many watching now? 61,000, someone answered. The number landed on Hargrove like a collapsing ceiling. So, Haynes said, folding his hands. You can honor the bet, or 61,000 people can watch the manager of a $4 billion fund explain that his word is meaningless the moment it costs him something. In your profession, Richard, which of those outcomes is more expensive? Before Hargrove could formulate a reply, Charles Whitmore stepped forward, and the room rearranged itself around his presence. $800 million, Richard, he said quietly. That is what my pensioners have committed to your judgment. Tonight I observed your judgment in close proximity. You picked a fight with a child to feel powerful. You walked into a trap a grandmaster says was 9 moves deep, and your immediate instinct, in front of all of us, was to default. Whitmore buttoned his coat. My office will contact yours Monday morning. The color left Hargrove's face in real time on 61,000 screens. Hargrove grasped for the only support he could locate. Alter, be reasonable. We'll address this privately. My attorneys can prepare something. A scholarship, perhaps. A gesture toward the community. The word you're searching for, Haynes said, is payment. Then Carol Webb did something she had never done in 6 years of service. She stepped forward and addressed her employer without being addressed first. Mr. Hargrove, for 6 years, I maintained your home. You charged me for a glass your guest broke. You called me the staff for so long, I wondered whether you ever learned my actual name. Your voice held perfectly steady. It's Carol Webb. And that young man is Marcus Theodore Webb. We were never beneath you, sir. You simply needed us to be. Somewhere in the crowd, someone began to applaud, and Haynes raised one hand to pause it. Not yet. The room understood. The boy wasn't finished. Marcus rose from the table. He walked to where the $20 bill still lay on the marble. It had remained there throughout the entire game, and no one had dared touch it. He picked it up, pressed it flat, and set it carefully on the board, beside the smothered white king. Keep it, sir, he said. You'll be needing it more than I will. He wasn't smiling when he said it. He wasn't angry either. He sounded like the board itself. Patient. Level. Final. The clip of that moment, the bill, the king, the boy's steady voice, became one of the most replayed 8 seconds on the internet that year. And Richard Hargrove stood in the center of his own ballroom, under his own chandelier, surrounded by 200 guests who would not meet his eyes. A man suddenly and completely alone in the house that 20 minutes earlier had belonged to him in every way that mattered. At evening, guests departed early. The valet line was subdued, and on 61,000 screens, then 100,000, then 1 million. The footage kept traveling, carrying the name Marcus Webb upward and the name Richard Hargrove in the opposite direction. By sunrise, the video had 4 million views. By Sunday night, 14 million. The internet, which assigns names to everything, had named Richard Hargrove within hours. The 9-move billionaire. It followed him onto cable news, into the private group chats of his own staff. onto the floor of the exchange. A financial broadcast ran the checkmate footage on a loop beside a graph of his fund's returns. The host didn't need to add commentary. He simply raised an eyebrow, and 1 million viewers understood the implication. The Monday following the party, Marcus went to school exactly as his mother required. It didn't matter. Students he had never spoken with lined the hallway recording as he walked to first period. His algebra instructor asked him to sign a chessboard. The reporters waited beyond the gates at the end of the school day. 3 talk programs called the principal's office before lunch. Through all of it, Marcus gave exactly 1 interview. 2 minutes, local news, standing beside his mother. They asked how it felt to humble a billionaire. He said, "I didn't humble anyone. The position did. He just couldn't hear it warning him." Monday morning, Whitmore Pension Partners filed notice of full redemption. $800 million withdrawn. By Wednesday, 3 additional institutional investors followed. Because in Hargrove's business, judgment is the only product. And the entire world had just observed his judgment lose to a 14-year-old in 9 moves, and then attempt to escape the bill. The wager itself never reached litigation. It didn't require it. Hargrove's own attorneys presented the situation plainly. A clearly stated agreement. 200 witnesses, dozens of recordings. A Grand Master who had formally called for the terms on camera. Contesting it would generate months of headlines. Honoring it would generate one. He paid. The check arrived at a small apartment in Bridgeport on a Tuesday. The same day of the week Pop had died. Carol held it in both hands for a long time. Then she sat down at the kitchen table, beneath the framed note about her son's remarkable mind, and wept the way you weep when something is finally, completely ended. She never cleaned another person's house. As for Hargrove Capital, it did not survive the year. The redemptions became a run. The run became a forced liquidation, and by spring, the fund that had once managed $4 billion was being wound down by attorneys who billed by the hour and laughed at no one's remarks. Hargrove kept the mansion, barely. He sold the art. He sold the vehicles. The $50,000 chessboard went to auction, where an anonymous buyer acquired it at half its value and donated it, with what can only be characterized as a certain sense of purpose, to a public school chess program in Harlem. No one ever confirmed the buyer's identity. But Walter Haynes smiled a very particular smile whenever reporters raised the question. And Marcus. 1 year later, a 15-year-old in a blazer, 1 size too large, stood on a stage, holding a state youth championship trophy above his head. It was Marcus's inaugural official tournament season. He had not lost a single rated game. In the front row, a silver-haired grandmaster applauded as he had applauded in a ballroom once before. First and longest. The preparation that followed looked nothing like the version in films. Haynes did not teach Marcus techniques. The boy already had those in abundance. He taught him composure under tournament clocks, openings deep enough to withstand masters, and how to lose. Because in rated competition, unlike ballrooms, everyone loses eventually. Marcus absorbed it all the way he absorbed everything. Quietly, completely. Twice as fast as expected. Haynes had taken the boy on the week after the party, not as an act of charity. He was precise about that with every journalist who asked. "I have coached prodigies for 4 decades, he told one. Talent is ordinary. What that young man possesses is considerably rarer. He constructs complete plans. His grandfather assembled that capacity 1 Saturday at a time at a stone table in a public park. The chess world owes that man a debt it never even recognized, let alone repaid. Marcus found a way to begin repaying it. Most of the $1 million went into something called the Mason Foundation, named for a hotel doorman that Charles never knew. It funds boards, instruction, and tournament entry fees for children from working neighborhoods. The entry fees being the central point. Because talent was never what the Webb family lacked. The price of admission was the Foundation's first project, 12 new stone chess tables in Marcus Garvey Park, arranged around the original ones, with a small bronze plaque that reads, "For Pop." The board never lies. Carol runs the foundation. She turned out to be formidably effective at it. 6 years managing a billionaire's household will teach you logistics. A lifetime of being underestimated will teach you precisely which children to identify. She recognizes their expressions on sight. They resemble her son. They resemble her father. Her final act as a domestic worker had been brief. She rode the 5:40 train one last morning, set her keys on Hargrove's marble counter, and left a single line written on a note beside them. It read, "We quit, the staff." On Saturdays, always Saturdays, Marcus takes the train to Harlem and instructs at the stone tables himself. Last month, a 6-year-old girl with butterfly clips in her hair sat down across from him. Marcus arranged pieces one by one, touching each soldier before the game began. Then he picked up a knight and held it where she could see it. "This one is my favorite," he said. "It moves like an L and thinks like a blade." The girl grinned. "Somewhere, you have to believe." An old doorman grinned back. Pop used to say the board was the only fair place he had ever encountered. His grandson is busy building more of them. As for the worn wooden king with the smooth crown, it does not rest in a trophy case. It rides in Marcus's pocket to every tournament, every park visit, every Saturday, without exception. Some inheritances are worth considerably more than $1 million, and Richard Hargrove, the last anyone reported, was consulting, which is what the financial world calls it when the phone stops ringing. People who visited his emptied mansion say the study is bare now, except for one item he refuses to discard: a $20 bill in a frame behind glass. Whether he keeps it as a wound or a lesson, only he can say. Here is why this story matters. Somewhere at this moment, a child is being dismissed by someone with more money and less imagination. That child might be yours. That child might have been you once. Both of you need to hear this. The board doesn't ask. It simply waits for your move. So here is the question, and I read every single comment. What hidden ability does someone in your life carry that the world is still sleeping on? Yours, your child's, your grandfather's. Tell me their story below. If this moved you, pass it to someone who needs it today. And stay with this channel, because every week I tell the stories of the people the world counted out, right up until the moment it had no choice but to count them. The story of Marcus Webb is much more than a dramatic chess match between a poor teenager and a billionaire. At its heart, it is a powerful reminder about human dignity, hidden potential, humility, and the danger of judging people based on appearances. It teaches lessons that are relevant not only to young people, but to anyone who has ever felt underestimated or overlooked. One of the most important lessons from this story is that talent can come from anywhere. Society often assumes that success belongs to those with money, status, connections, or prestigious backgrounds. Marcus had none of those advantages. He was the son of a hard-working housekeeper and spent most of his time trying to stay invisible in a world that looked down on him. Yet beneath that quiet exterior was an extraordinary mind that had been developed through years of dedication, discipline, and learning. This reminds us that we should never judge someone by their appearance, job title, race, age, or financial situation. Many of the world's greatest talents remain hidden because people are too quick to make assumptions. Every person carries gifts, abilities, and potential that may not be immediately visible. The story challenges us to look beyond stereotypes and recognize the value in every individual. Another powerful lesson is the importance of humility. Richard Hargrove believed his wealth and success made him superior to everyone around him. He was so confident in his own abilities that he stopped respecting others. His arrogance blinded him to reality. Instead of treating Marcus with kindness, he chose to humiliate him publicly. In the end, it was not Marcus's intelligence alone that defeated Hargrove. It was Hargrove's pride. Humility is one of the most valuable qualities a person can possess. No matter how successful we become, there is always something we do not know and someone from whom we can learn. Arrogance creates blind spots, while humility keeps us open to growth. Hargrove lost because he underestimated his opponent before the game even began. The story also highlights the value of preparation and perseverance. Marcus's victory did not happen because of luck. It was the result of thousands of hours spent studying, practicing, and improving his skills. While others slept, he played game after game online. While others focused on appearances, he focused on mastery. His success was built long before the moment the world noticed him. This teaches an important truth. Success is often invisible before it becomes visible. People usually see the victory, but they rarely see the years of effort behind it. Marcus's story encourages viewers to stay committed to their goals, even when nobody is watching or recognizing their progress. Perhaps the most touching lesson comes from Marcus's grandfather, Theodore Mason. He taught Marcus that the chessboard was one of the few places where everyone starts equal. His wisdom reminds us that character, knowledge, and determination are far more important than social status. Values passed down from one generation to another can shape a person's entire future. Finally, the story demonstrates that true victory is not about revenge. Marcus never shouted, insulted, or humiliated Hargrove after winning. He remained calm, respectful, and dignified. His actions proved that real strength comes from self-control and confidence, not from putting others down. In the end, Marcus Webb's story teaches us a timeless lesson. Never underestimate anyone, never allow others to define your worth, and never stop developing the gifts you have been given. Talent may be hidden, but excellence eventually reveals itself. As the story reminds us, the world may overlook you for a time, but preparation, character, and perseverance can speak louder than any prejudice ever could.